Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Ian Mann, and I'm joined on the panel today via Zoom with Ms. Gail Anderson and Ms. Diane Knight. The secretary today is Mrs. Crystal Harland, and the assessor is Mr. Arif Das Mohammed. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in the application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the Board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed and recorded and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing item 1 only on our docket today. Mrs. Harland, would you please affirm the assessors and the applicant's testimony?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Assessor, would you please state your full name?
Arif Das Mohammed.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, would you please state your full name?
Trevor Smith.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Okay, Mr. Das Mohammed, 1180 Springfield Road is the sole matter remaining on the docket today. If you could please introduce the property and provide us your evidence from your brief on this, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So Board of Revision file number 24-4071, roll number 040070074000. Address is 1180 Springfield Road. The owner is Kitchen Craft of Canada Limited. Roll year is 2025. Reference date is April 1st, 2023. Assessed value is $25,491,000. Parcel use is industrial warehouse. Number of buildings is 13. Number of premises is 1. Stories range from 1 to 2. Actual year built ranges from 1971 to 2007. Effective year built is 1980. Wall heights range from 12 feet to 26 feet. Zoning is M2 manufacturing general. Land area is 2,587,865 square feet. Plan area is approximately 525,000 square feet. Gross floor area and leasable area are both 530,378 square feet. Land to plan area is 4.93 to 1. If you turn to my page 12. Let me know when you get there.
Yep.
Okay, so there's the subject map. It's located in the northeast quadrant of the city. The market area is called North Transcona Yards. At the bottom is a close-up view of the subject area. On the following page, we have the subject parcel boundaries, and then followed by a subject aerial view. On the following page, there are some more aerial views. You'll note that there is a lot of land there that's not being used currently. On the following page is a close-up of the subject property, the buildings. So the top view, I believe, is a north to south view, and the bottom is south to north view. And then on page 16, just another close-up with the parking lot there. At the bottom of page 16 is the street views of the subject property. Same with page 17, and at the top of page 18. On the following page, I've summarized the building sections. So there's 13 buildings in total. Right at the bottom, I've created a little chart showing you where the wall heights are. So you'll note that approximately a third of the property has 16 feet walls height. Another third is between 18 feet and 21 feet. And then another third, or slightly more than a third, is 24 feet wall heights. On the following page, I have summarized the permits that have been taken out on this property since 2000. So there are permits totaling over $12 million for additions, structural alterations, interior and exterior alterations. This all suggests that the property has been fairly well maintained and has been added to over the last 22 years. On the following page, this site was listed on a contaminated contaminated sites list by the province, but it is no longer on there. So there's a letter from the province just indicating that it's not on the list anymore. Same with on page 22, I did a search on their new registry, and you can see that it's not listed there. Same with page 23, they have a map showing that it is not listed on there. If you go back to my page number 3, there I have my rent comparables. So my thinking on this, reasoning on this, on the comparables was that I would find the largest leasable area wise tenanted properties. So this is what I could find. So all comparables are industrial properties with large leasable areas. All leases are current in relation to the reference date. Year built ranges from 1966 to 2001. Wall heights range from 17 feet to 34 feet. Leasable areas range from approximately 101,000 square feet to 228,000 square feet. I could find no comparables that were tenanted that were larger. Net rents range from $5.73 per square foot to $8.50 per square foot. Now, the subject property is much larger than that, so we have adjusted and we are coming in at a lower rental rate than that. On the following page are my land comparable sales. So all sales are prior to the reference date. All comparables are industrial vacant land sales. Land area ranges from approximately 345,000 square feet to 523,000 square feet. Sales price ranges from $3.48 per square foot to $7.47 per square foot. The comparables have an average selling price of $5.30 per square foot. We have assessed the excess land at $2.33 per square foot. On the following page is my workup. So we're utilizing an overall net rental rate of $3.53. We're utilizing a 1.5% market vacancy. We're utilizing 3% for non-recoverable expenses and $4 per square foot for vacancy shortfall. I note on the applicant's evidence that they are using $5 per square foot for vacancy shortfall. The reason we use $4 is to be fair and equitable throughout the range of industrial properties, and that's what we've been charging all of the industrial properties in Winnipeg for this roll cycle. So this works out to an NOI of $1,757,000, and we're utilizing a cap rate of 7.2%. We're assessing the additional land at $1,088,000. This results in an assessed value of $25,491,000. In the back of my brief, you'll see some outside industry reports. They all indicate that the Winnipeg industrial market has remained robust. Demand is there's robust demand across the full range of industrial real estate properties. Vacancy has been low and stable. Rental rates have increased and cap rates have compressed over this time period. Therefore, for the reasons as stated above, I believe that the assessed value of $25,491,000 to be fair and equitable. I'll also point out that, as you note on the docket, we've had Mr. Smith and I have had a good working relationship on this docket. We've come to agreements on most of the properties here except for this one. So I think we were just too far apart on that, but yeah, so I'm open to questions now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dasmohammed. Mr. Smith, questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And first of all, as Mr. Dasmohammed stated, I would agree. We've certainly had a good working relationship with regard to all the other properties that were on the docket today and on other properties that we've dealt with as well. So we certainly appreciate that from our end. And this was the sole property that we did need to proceed with. So we do have a few questions. I guess to start with, Mr. Chair, we had submitted some rebuttal as well. I just wanted to make sure that that had been received by everybody as well.
I have not seen it as yet. Well, what we'll do is we'll hear the questions and your questions, then we'll hear your presentation, and then we'll take a break and have a look at the rebuttal evidence just to follow the process and continue on from there. I'll confirm with Mrs. Harlan that the rebuttal evidence is there for distribution.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I can distribute it whenever you like.
Mr. Chair, I also had rebuttal, so maybe I could give that to you also before the break.
Okay, then we'll proceed then with the questions that Mr. Smith has, and then the questions that we may have of you, and then we'll hear Mr. Smith's presentation. Then we'll take a break. Then we'll have the rebuttal evidence distributed, and we'll hear from both of you after that. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Great. Mr. Smith, then would you please, thank you for alerting us to that, but if you would continue with your questions, please.
Absolutely. Looking at the subject property here. So looking at your rent comparables on page number 3, I do have I guess some queries or some things to bring to light. So 861 McLeod Avenue, this would be Woodland Supply, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I was approached by Woodland Supply to appeal their assessment, and they were owner occupants of that particular facility. So I just wanted to check whether the city had that back.
We had it as a tenant, so I will double check that once.
And it may be that the owners own it under a numbered company or something, but they are.
Okay, I will look into that.
Okay. The second property that we're looking at there, 1750 Inkster. So that is owned by Artis REIT, I believe, correct?
Yes.
And in reading their write-up about the property, it underwent a full renovation in 2015 with a brand new office put in, some life systems, full exterior, fully new loading dock or loading area with multiple doors, levelers, new pavement, etc. Correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't check out the permits on the property, any of these properties actually.
And that's fair. I get it. There's obviously a lot of them, and these are always awkward questions, but I do have to ask them. The 200 Big N, that is relatively new high cube flex warehouse building within the St. Boniface Industrial Park, right?
It was built in 2001.
Okay. Let's see. I won't go through them one by one. I guess the last one I'll look at would be 1370 Sony Place. So this is kind of a premier warehouse just off of McGilvery in southwest Winnipeg. Would that be a fair statement?
Premier as in Wall Heights?
Location, loading, wall heights, the type of tenancies they draw.
Yeah, so when I chose my comparables, my sole purpose was to choose the largest that were available as tenant properties.
Right.
So that's how I picked. And you'll note that we're not anywhere near these rental rates when we did our workup.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. So just on that note, and I of course had a similar problem. None of the comparables are close in terms of size to the subject property, right?
Right, yeah.
And other than the owner occupied McLeod property, I don't believe the other ones are manufacturing tenancies, are there?
I believe they're not manufacturing, they're industrial properties, but they are classified as a storage warehouse, I believe.
Okay, fair enough. All right, moving forward. To the land, oh, sorry, just another question. Given workload at the city, I'm assuming you haven't had the opportunity to inspect this particular.
No, no, I have not. I'm not sure if my colleague has, which has been dealing with this property with you, Mr. Smith, but I
At this
haven't.
time, we haven't. I'm sure
Okay.
that we will, but not at this time.
Okay.
Looking at the land issue, so the sales on page number 4. So I looked at the location of these. So these are all located within developed industrial parks, essentially, correct?
Yes, again, my thought process on this was to find large, sales of vacant land, and this is what I found, so.
Yeah, well, that's certainly fair. So again, just on that same note, so Black Diamond, number 3 and number 4, Mazenod, those are within that formal St. Boniface industrial development. And Moray is in that Moray industrial development as well.
Yes, the only one maybe close is the one on La Jamodier there at Symington Yards, so.
Right, and that one is located
It's, I believe it's
north of
southeast of the subject.
north of Fermor, I believe. Is that correct? Just around the bend, there's that large church, and then I think this is immediately to the north of that?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know off the top of my
So
head.
that's fine. And then on the land issue, so you had some photos of or aerial photos of the land rather. Was the condition, elevation, et cetera, of the land taken into account with regard to the value that was placed on it?
No, it's developable, but no, I didn't put any consideration
Okay.
into elevation.
So it was formerly contaminated, but had been remediated according to the email that you had on page 21, correct?
Yes.
So they're saying, is remediation required? Not at this time. So it's not on their list, but and they're saying that nothing is required at this point.
Correct.
All right, I think those are all of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, do you have questions?
Sorry, I have no questions. Thank you.
Ms. Knight, have you questions?
No, sir.
Mr. Dustmahammed, I have some questions. With respect to your rental comparables,
Yep.
They're all of a size, as you pointed out, smaller than the subject property. The rent per square foot is also considerably higher. How did you arrive, or was it all model driven, that the $3.53 per square
It
foot?
was model driven. The issue with the properties this size is most of them are owner occupied, so it's hard to find any tenanted properties this large.
And how many properties this large, or how many manufacturing facilities this large would there be in Winnipeg?
Well, there's Geldwin windows. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but there are some. There like Geldwin windows is one.
Boeing, perhaps?
Boeing is another, yes, in Murray Industrial.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The land areas, the land comparable sales, these are all within the perimeter. Are they not comparable 1, 2, 3, and 4? They're within the perimeter highway?
I believe so, yes.
And the subject property, is it within the perimeter highway as well, the confines of the perimeter?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I think those are my questions. Thank you. Mr. Smith, we'll hear your presentation, have the questions, then we'll take a short recess and review the rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So 1180 Springfield Road. This is the kitchen craft manufacturing facility in Winnipeg. It's originally started in 1971, so they've been here for quite some time. And to answer your question with regard to manufacturing facilities of this size, at 529,000 square feet, the subject property in a single building is the fourth largest industrial manufacturing facility in Winnipeg. That being in a single building from what we were able to discern. The larger ones being the Buehler Versatile plant at 1260 Clarence in Fort Garry at a little over 780,000 square feet. You have Standard Arrow on Berry Street, 640,000+ square feet. And then finally you have MacDon in the Moray industrial area on Moray Street at a little over 600,000 square feet. So the subject property comes in fourth to those. There are others, obviously, Geldwin, etc. But they don't really come close in terms of size. Geldwin, I'm not sure about. I don't have the figures on that one, but these are obviously the largest actual manufacturing plants within the city. And there is a distinction between manufacturing facilities and storage warehouses. Obviously, storage warehouse is designed exactly for that. It's wide open. The column spacing is, pardon me, optimized for storage, roof height for racking of materials, etc. The loading courts, all of these things are designed specifically for that particular warehouse use. And of course, the universe of tenants for warehouse space is significantly larger than it would be for manufacturing facility. Just inherently, there are more tenants, be they on the small end of the scale for smaller sizes of units, or at the larger end of the scale at say 50,000 square feet and up somewhat. Obviously, nowhere near the size of the subject property at over 500,000 square feet, but there are tenants in those ranges, and you do get leases in there. So we have the same issue that the city has with regard to coming up with comparables that are manufacturing facilities in the city of a significant size that are true arm's length rents. For the most part, those manufacturers that I just mentioned, not for the most part, they are all owner occupied facilities. And for the most part, all other large manufacturing facilities are also owner occupied. So you don't have that situation where there's a lot of arm's length rental for this type of use out there. So we do need to look at the warehouse rents as well in the marketplace. We do have one that is more informative than the others, which I will get to in a moment, but that is, pardon me, that is what we're looking at for the subject. So let's, we have a street front aerial on the front of my brief, as you can see from Springfield. Obviously difficult to take the whole building structure into account. So you're just seeing a portion of the building there. And we can flip to my page number 3. We have further detail regarding the property. Kitchen Crafted Canada being the owner, developed between 1971 and 2006 as far as the structure itself. Sitting on just under 60 acres, land to plan area ratio of 4.91 to 1, and the leasable area, we have a marginal difference from what the city does of 529,028 square feet. Now, subject property has been assessed for 2024 at $25,491,000. As you can see, that is a 58% increase over the 2023 assessment, increase of over $9 million. The 2023 being shown below it there, reduced to $16,121,000. I have the remainder of the history of the assessment for the property there for you to see. And our assessed value that we have assigned to the property based on our analysis of it for 2025 is $18,374,000. So above the 2023 assessment by a significant margin. Let's flip forward. Given the scale of the property, it's important to understand the history of it and the impact that a property of that size and development, how that has an impact on value. So again, the property was developed in stages between 1971 and 2006. There are a total of 13 individual structures essentially that were built as the manufacturer expanded their business over time and required more space, they would add a building on in order to accommodate their needs and grow the plant as needed. So what you end up with in that case is 13 separate buildings, essentially 13 separate roofs, all joined together in a bit of a mishmash of development that is certainly not optimal and not how the property would be designed if you were to design a manufacturing facility all in one fell swoop. Today, it would not look remotely like this. So you look at my page number 5, you can see an aerial of the whole structure, and you get a sense of those 13 different buildings as described in my page earlier, and the extensive amount of roof. So I'll just go through this description a little bit on page 4, as it is crucial to understanding it. So we have a total main floor area of 525,068 square feet, plus some second floor office area as shown there, 3,960 square feet, giving us a total area of 529,028 square feet. Now, that's taken directly from City of Winnipeg building details that are from the City of Winnipeg itself. So these are the areas as measured. We've added on the full second floor for that building section number 3, 3,960 square feet, which gives us the 529,028 square feet. It's a small discrepancy. I'm not putting a lot of weight on that, obviously, but I don't see how the building can be bigger than what the footprint is of it. So that should be an accurate calculation with regard to the area. Description of the build out is there for you. There's a mixture of construction, obviously, over time from 1971 through 2006. You have significantly varying roof heights, as Mr. Dus Mohammed has already mentioned. You've got a third of the building with significantly low wall heights. Then you have a third that are, I think, 18 to 20 square feet. And then there was one large addition put on in 2001 that had a 24-foot wall height. So certainly larger, but not the 28 to 30, 32 that you see in many cases for storage warehouses in today's new builds. The roofing, obviously a mixture between some wood roofs, which you'll see in the photos, steel frame, steel deck. There's a large variety. We have a situation again with a total of 12 acres of essentially aging roof with different heights, different joining mechanisms, etc. And they experience significant water penetration over time, just given the nature of building a facility like this. So they have an ongoing repair and maintenance requirement for their roofing. Obviously, 12 acres of roof is going to have a significant repair cost over time and on an ongoing basis. The build out of the property over time in the 13 different units is, as I mentioned, obviously less than optimal. You have demising walls throughout the facility that you would never put in there in a normal situation in designing a facility for manufacturing. The building would be added onto, you'd have this new building, and it would be demised off from the other with openings created in order to have the flow through for manufacturing and transfer of goods. Now, this has resulted obviously in a less than optimal layout for the manufacturer and in the production of their materials, flowing goods through the facility and ultimately out to shipping. which leads to inefficiencies and holdups over time. This obviously results in a high degree of functional obsolescence for the property. So that is the situation. As you'll see in the photos, there is certainly wear and tear on the building over time that you can see from the photos. Manufacturing tends to lead to that. So that is the background. We can have a look at some of the photos beginning on page 5. We have the aerial, one of the exterior areas. As you can see, it is gravel surfaced for the most part. They do have a portion that has been paved. Essentially, the apron where the loading dock is a paved area. The rest of the site and the area that they drive those trailers in and out of is gravel surfaced, and you can see that. Some specialized equipment, obviously, on page 7, another exterior on bottom of page 7, and then we get into the interior. Older office area, obviously, page 8. One of the interior areas on page number 8 as well. Just some of the interior sections on page 9. Obviously, you can see the demising between areas of the building itself. Just impact damage from manufacturing and storage, etc. Again, more demising at the bottom of page 10. Then we move into page 11. You can see the mixture of roofs there. Obviously, we have the lower wood deck roof at the bottom, steel deck at the top, and that is essentially the building. There is a newer portion at the back, which is the warehouse. Don't believe that we may have had a photo of that. I think the loading area on page 8 may actually, yeah, that's from that newer section at the back of the property, just to give you an idea. Let's move forward to the site itself. So we're looking at just under 60 acres, 59.5. Land to plan area ratio is 4.91 to 1. 4.9 to 1. Your standard industrial range being desirable range typically being 4 up to 7 to 1. So they fit within that. When we look at the site itself and the additional land component that the city has assigned to it, yes, there is land there, and we are in agreement that there should be a value placed on it. If you look at my page 12, you can see where that land would be located. It's on the western side of the property, and it narrows from the rear as you have a rail line located at the backside. So it narrows the land component considerably from one end to the other. So it's a little bit different in terms of shape. More importantly than that, in terms of shape, is the land itself. So if you look at page number 12 at the bottom, you can see the level of the land. So typically it's not in a developable state. It's not, it hasn't been gravel surfaced and is ready for use or sale or anything of that nature. In fact, there isn't a ready access onto that section. It is low lying, so there would be considerable costs with regard to bringing fill in, leveling it out, and making it a developable parcel, etc. Essentially. So in looking at it, it would typically transact for these reasons at a value that would be below what you would find in a more typical location, such as the St. Boniface Industrial Park or Moray Industrial, where you're looking at land that's ready to go. We look at my page 13. I've given you our valuation with regard to that additional land. We have a little over 466,000 square feet that's being assigned as additional land. I would point out also if we remove that land from the overall site size of the entire property, that would then reduce the land to plan area ratio from the current 4.91 to 1 as well. Just something else to take in mind. Keep in mind when looking at the final valuation. So page 13, we have our chart of transactions. If we look at the sales that we have there, they range considerably, obviously, in terms of location. I would point to our more recent ones of a more significant size, those being 534 Donald, or 534 Dugald, rather. 2020 transaction of 14 acres, 600,000+ square feet, trading at $2.25, $2.25 per square foot. Equally, 225 Omans, 2019 sale, smaller than the subject at 4.5 acres, but still significant in size. Also at that same kind of range, $2.28 per square foot. So those would be the closest in terms of being the right size. There is a transaction also. There's a little bit smaller, number 1 on Softly Road, which is just off of La Jamodier, a little over 3 acres, trading at $1.84 per square foot. Now, when we looked at this property, given the cost that would be involved in bringing it up to a developable standard by bringing in fill in order to level it out, taking out the low-lying level of it, and obviously the marshiness, we have applied a rate of $1.50 per square foot, giving us $700,000 as our final market value. So that takes into account the land. And we can skip forward to my page number 16. So there's a bit of text here, so I'll try and be efficient, but please bear with me on this. And these are accepted tenants, essentially, of valuing large single tenant industrial properties or specific use properties such as this. So I'll go through the material relatively efficiently if I can, and we can move on to the value. City of Winnipeg Assessment Department mass appraisal model based on the income approach is used for determining commercial properties. The resultant market values based on the inputs can be somewhat higher than the actual values due to a lack of truly comparable data. Now, reason I put that in there is again specific to large manufacturing facilities. We don't have a lot of rents for these types of facilities out there, very, very few, and that can lead to inaccuracies in projecting the final market value. So page 16, property specific factors to keep in mind for large scale industrial. Characteristics of large single tenant industrial that bear consideration are size and function, number 1. Number 2, often this type of property is modified or developed to accommodate specific equipment or fixtures that are specific to the occupant's needs. The layout or development is rarely suitable for another tenant without significant alteration or investment. Number 3, usually has limited arm's length rental potential. So those are all things I've already essentially stated in describing the build out of the property. There's further text regarding this on the same page, size and function. It, given the size of the property, tends to classify the property as special purpose to start with, because it narrows the number of potential users and purchasers. Plant frequently is designed as this one is and constructed initially for a special purpose requiring a large area as contrasted with a general purpose or spec type building.
Hey, Mr. Smith, Mr. Smith,
Yes.
sorry to
Mr.
interrupt you
Chair.
here, but I don't think any of these are at issue, the three that you have outlined. And rather than reading the text to us, if you can perhaps point out which one is the most significant and how that affects the rental rates chosen, would be of more assistance.
Okay, so I would, I will follow your direction. I will point out that all three are in play, and that is why I'm reading the text. Obviously, I don't want to read my whole brief to you or anything of that nature, but each of these are important and need to be taken into account. I'm not going to discard two and point to one as being solely important.
No, that's fine. And
Size, first of all, is going to make it special purpose, limit the market for it. Functional obsolescence, as I've already described, the layout and build out of it certainly makes it functionally obsolete. It's essentially functionally obsolete for the existing occupant, never mind looking for an occupant on the market for that property. And then we move on to limited rental potential, given again the layout and size. So I'll leave that there for you to read. All three of them come into play and should be considered with regard to the rental value as well as the other parameters of valuation. So that is the background. We can move forward to the valuation itself. And look at my page number 18 with regard to rental rates. So as Mr. Dustmat Hamid had mentioned, there are very, very few large scale manufacturing facilities that are arm's length, that have arm's length leases on them. We do have one in here, which I will point out, and we can and move into this phase of evaluation. So subject property, 530,000 square feet, 29,000. Built in stages between 71 and 2006. And you have essentially 16 to 24 foot wall height. 26, I think, is the office area, which really doesn't count. 24 is the large area at the rear of it. Our first comp, 1821 Wellington. Significant size lease here, 146,000 square feet at $2 per square foot. This is located out near the airport, and you can see the detail with regard to that one. Our second comp is actually a manufacturing facility. This is Reliance Products. They have been in that facility for some time. They renewed in 2018 at a rate of $3.15 per square foot for a period of 5 years. That may have gone up when they renewed at the end of that, but I can tell you that from their prior renewal, they went up from $3 to $3.15 per square foot. So they went up 15 cents per square foot over a period of 5 years leading up to that 2018 renewal. Then we get into warehousing, essentially with one exception on Sargent, 1750 Inkster. We have a large lease of over 100,000 square feet at $3.12 a square foot. 22 foot clear warehouse, standard warehouse there. We then have 1725 Sargent. This is also a manufacturing facility, $2.65 per square foot, a little over 100,000 square feet. Significantly lower wall height, obviously, on that property, which should be taken into account. And we have 770 Pandora. This is much more recently, well, than some of the other comps, constructed, built originally in 73. It has relatively high ceiling height of 20 feet, good loading. And this is our largest comp, well, second largest rather, at 287,000 square feet, almost. A tenant was in there for $2.85 per square foot net in that particular lease. Then we move on, similarly, similar area, 630 Kernahan. These were all larger scale warehouse properties that were subdivided out as the original tenant was gone. 630 Kernahan, we have a rent of $355 for 61,000, 286 for 108,000. Now, looking at that one, it's an excellent warehouse facility, 26-foot wall height, built in 73, still good quality facility out in that same area. And finally, we have 630 Kernahan, 355,000 square feet at $2.75 a square foot. Again, 26-foot wall height, quality warehouse facility, same as the two before that. Now, the challenge here is in finding large-scale industrial rents. So if we look at the rents that the city has, yes, they are large-scale, and I acknowledge the challenge in finding appropriate rents for a property of this type. Many of the ones that the city has included there are, well, not many of them, they're all superior to the subject property, both in terms of the buildings they are, the amenities that they would provide to a tenant, their ceiling heights, the loading, the yard area, et cetera, et cetera. So they are certainly superior, as are the comps that we are generally providing here as well, with the exception probably of 1093 Sherwin with the lower ceiling height. I'd say it's more in line with the subject in terms of the build out and the age. It is all a single facility built as that to start with, so it doesn't have the demising issue and the obsolescence that the subject has. So that is the background. We're looking at a range of $2 a square foot up to a high of $3.55 a square foot. Obviously, some of these leases are a little bit older. The one I would point you to in particular would be that 1093 Sherwin at $3.15 a square foot for 175,000 square feet. Now, this is less than a third the size of the subject property, all for a main one building built as one original building without the same obsolescence issue that the subject has. So that is our least comparable chart. It is very difficult to provide great comparables for a property such as this. We have done our best to do so. You look at my page 19, again, as I emphasize, this is the fourth largest manufacturing facility in the city. The sheer scale of the property dramatically limits the market for any potential tenants. You really wouldn't find a tenant of 530,000 square feet coming into Winnipeg in order to rent a facility such as this. If there was a tenant like that, which is exceptionally rare, I can't think of a situation where that has happened, they would build their own facility. They would never move into anything such as the subject property. So it is a theoretical exercise that we're taking on and saying, what would somebody pay on the open market in order to rent this facility that is essentially obsolete and more than 2/3 the size of all of the leases that are out there. So looking at all the detail that I provided you, we have increased our rental rate from the prior cycle. We were at $2.75 a square foot. We have increased it to $3 per square foot for the subject for the 2025 assessment based on the information presented. So you can see the resultants, gross potential rent. We move on to vacancy. And if we look at my page 20 with regard to vacancy, I've given you the statistics for Winnipeg from a couple of sources here. Colliers simply has an overall number for the market as a whole of 1.5%. When we look at the Johnson report, it's broken down considerably more. They have the overall industrial vacancy, they're at 1.9. And their stats for Transcona are very poor. So as you can see, they're indicating 0%, which is certainly not the case for a number of categories for Transcona. If you look at the Johnson report in any detail and you go back on it over time and look at certain areas, it's not that there's zero, it's that they don't have good information on that area. So take that into account when you're looking at the Transcona stats. The vacancy stats, investment vacancy at the point in time, 4.5%, single tenant investment, 4.8, multi 7.7, it goes up. I then give you some 5-year stats for investment, single tenant investment and multi-tenant. You can see they're in the 6 to 7% range. 1.5% vacancy essentially amounts to less than a single month of vacancy, or less than a single month of vacancy on a 5-year term to a tenant. So if you leased it for 5 years, you're accounting for less than 1 month of vacancy. Now, if you have 530,000 square feet, any vacancy obviously has an impact. It's not going to take you less than 1 month to lease this facility out. So when it goes dark, it's going to be significant. Now, we have applied 3%, which is well under what the market statistics are showing. But there's a reason we're applying 3% and not 1.5%. 1.5% really doesn't take into account, it's just not a realistic figure. The expense allowance, we've covered this extensively. I'm going to leave that in the panel's capable hands. You know my reasons for the request for 5%. All of the detail is there for you to read if you wish, and we can move on to shortfall. It's unusual for me to make a change to shortfall, as typically the amount that the city is applying is within reason and close to the subject property. Whether it's slightly more or slightly less, it's a fair and equitable amount. The reason I've changed it is that when you have a large manufacturing facility such as this, the costs are are always greater than they are for a more standard, smaller industrial building. So let's look at the background here. I've given you an expense stabilization at the top of my page 22, looking at the prior 3 years. So we've stabilized this for 2023. You can see the prior 3 years ranged from $4.05 up to $5 per square foot for 2022. And we've stabilized that at $4.59 per square foot. If you look at the HVAC cost alone, it's $1.27, $1.74, $2.41 per square foot for the subject property. That wouldn't change. The facility is the facility. That would be your ongoing costs. Now, if we look at the years prior to that, you can see again 3-year stabilization, 2018 through 2020, with expenses ranging from $5.42 per square foot to $4.07. I'm not sure what the minor discrepancy is there. It should be 405 or 407, one of the two. with stabilization at $4.98 per square foot. Again, they all tend to center on that $5 per square foot for the subject property. Expenses are going to be higher. We've applied $5 per square foot based on the actual information from the property. And again, this will be similar for other large manufacturing facilities. I'll point out on my page 23, this is a well-known factor. Reader is referred to the article Appraisal Issues and the Valuation of Extremely Large Buildings by Gary Bacciuello, which references very high operating costs for buildings of a large size, especially in regard to utilities and roofing. Again, we have a 12-acre roof here. Let's move on to capitalization rate. So I am going to read you a little bit here, Mr. Chair, just at the top of my page. If we look at the subject property, again, it's a large-scale owner-occupied manufacturing property, would not be considered an investment property by standard market investors. It simply wouldn't meet their requirements. The following factors need to be considered in looking at an appropriate cap rate. It is a special purpose building, limited utility to other users. High capital investment expenses, significant roof and HVAC replacement costs and operation over time. It is well oversized property for the market. Prospects of finding a single tenant to replace this property would be minimal, as I've already stated. I really can't see that happening. Limited ability to convert to multi-tenancy given the construction and layout of the property. That's certainly the case. Vacancy risk. We're not adding a significant amount to vacancy, but we brought it up to a standard market level. Functional obsolescence of the building. There's also physical obsolescence given some of the structure. And then financing issues. Trying to take a property of this size to the markets in order to obtain mortgage financing would be a challenge, depending on the type of tenant that one was able to draw to it. That would certainly be challenging as well. Typically, you're looking at a lot more hoops to jump through and a somewhat increased rate with regard to lending for a property of this type as well. That being said, those need to be taken into account. Let's look at the main market participants with regard to cap rates. We have quoted Colliers here. Colliers is indicating 6 to 7% for industrial class A properties and 6.5 to 7.5 for industrial class B. Now, subject property wouldn't fall into either of those categories. It's again, it wouldn't be considered a standard investment property by any astute investor out there. The structure itself, the risk of a tenancy of that size, we've had a number of other manufacturers in Winnipeg close their businesses of this size as their industry has essentially disappeared. It's gone south to Mexico and other production locations, which is certainly a risk for the subject property as well with regard to the current owner and potential tenant, if you consider them a potential tenant. Pardon me. So it really doesn't fit within their classification. We look at the factors that need to be taken into account. The cap rate is going to be higher than what those ranges are. We've also provided you with our capitalization rate study at the bottom of the page. You can see we have a total of 6 individual transactions. These were all properties that sold for the in-place income and expense, the actual NOI. And we have reviewed them and determined the capitalization rates as stated. So those are based on the actuals of the property and the actual sale price as of the value, as of the sale date, rather, not the valuation date. You can see the range of properties there. Most of them are relatively recent. We've got quite a number in the 6.5% range. We have significant property on Church trading at 8.7% in 2021. We have the FedEx facility, number 5 on Black Diamond Boulevard, very as modern a building as can be developed. Trading in 2021 at a reported cap rate of 6.4%. Now, FedEx is not going anywhere. That's as blue chip as one can get with regard to a tenant, and they're paying 6.4% there. Beyond that, we have the interest rate environment as of the valuation date. If you look at the bottom of my page 24, and I've spoken about this to all of the panel members already, I believe, Bank of Canada interest rates rose from 0.5% in spring of 2022 to 4.75% as of the valuation date. There is a direct correlation between this increase in interest rate and the mortgage lending rates that would be available on the marketplace. So if you go to buy the property as of the valuation date, the mortgage rate that you're going to be able to achieve is going to be significantly higher than it was a year ago. This is obviously going to increase your costs of borrowing for that property, which would eat into your return. So obviously you would be willing to pay less for that property in order to protect your return. So what that means is that the capitalization rate would increase. So that is the final result of all of that. I'm not the only appellant that is bringing this forward to the panel. I'm sure you've heard this from any number of other sources as well. If you look at the final page of my brief, you can see the Bank of Canada interest rates and how they've changed from April 2019 to April of 2023, and that 4% lift in a single year from 0.5 to 4.75. It's essentially a historic rise over that span of time. And without question, there is an impact on capitalization rates. So taking all of these factors into consideration, we have used an 8% capitalization rate for the subject. This is just outside of the range that we're seeing both in our market transactions that we show, as well as what the main market brokerage is indicating at 6.5 to 7.5% as well. So we've made an increase, but it's not an outlandish increase. It's simply reflecting how the property would be viewed by any potential purchaser, as well as any potential lender as well. So if you look at my page 25, you can see the summary of this. Our valuation in comparison to the city's 2025 valuation and the city's 2023 valuation. So we have applied $3 a square foot, which is an increase from our prior cycle at $2.75 per square foot. We've applied the 3% vacancy. I see that I've applied 3% expense allowance in this instance, which I won't change at this point. Our $5 shortfall and the $8 cap rate, or 8% cap rate rather, giving us a income value of $17,674,000, which we add the land adjustment to, giving us our final value of $18,374,000. Again, this is an increase of over $2 million from the 2023 assessment, which is still under appeal by ourselves and the city, I believe, at the municipal board. The addenda includes the income and expense, as well as the decision from the last cycle, which includes the basis that it was decided on, which was our net operating income and a cap rate of 8% plus market value for the land. And then I give you that brief section of our brief that gives you the details with regard to what we used, which was 275, and ultimately an 8% cap rate was decided. So happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Desmohammed, any questions?
Yes, I'll just keep it brief. So on your page 3, you indicated that the increase is quite large, but you did mention that both parties have appealed to the Muni Board, and as such, the outcome may be less or more. Is that correct?
Well, there is that potential. If you look at the prior cycles, we have those under appeal for 2018 and 2020 as well. I don't believe the city does at those particular cycles.
In regards to your page 13, your surplus land comparables.
Yes,
So you would agree that the most recent ones are number 1 to 4?
I would, yes.
Okay, and the closest ones to the subject would be 2 and 4, and if you go a little bit further, maybe even 5 there. Is that correct?
Well, I haven't looked specifically at that softly.
Size-wise, yeah.
Oh, size-wise,
acreage,
oh,
yeah.
okay, sorry.
Yeah.
In terms of size, that seems fair, yeah.
Okay, and those range from say $2.25 to $3.63.
I believe that is accurate, yes. Again, those were immediately developable sites that didn't need infill, et cetera, to and other investment to bring them up to a developable standard.
And then going on to your page 18, your comparables, lease comparables.
Yeah,
You indicated that Sherwin may be the closest one to the subject. Is that correct?
well, what I was
Otherwise-
indicating with that one was that it is an actual manufacturing facility.
Okay.
Has been for years.
And you'd agree that 1821 Wellington is actually the Park and Fly? Is that correct?
1821, yes, it is a warehouse, and yeah, I believe Park and Fly is the occupant there.
So it's basically a garage with no heat in it, I assume?
I don't believe there's no heat, but if that is the case, we'll certainly take that into consideration.
And 770 Pandora, you calculated a gross net. Did you calculate that, or was that?
I did indeed. It's a property that I represent. It's owned by another former large manufacturer that has been put out of business by Mexico, essentially. And this is their former facility that they had tenanted out on a gross basis. So yes, I've made those calculations.
And that tenant was Delta 9, is that right?
No, Delta 9 is in 760 Pandora, which is a separate building, and then they have another. Now they rented some additional space, which is also not in it's in 770, but not in this main building that I'm indicating here. It's in a separate building at the back, so that's not actually Delta 9.
Okay, so but Delta 9 is in the complex, is that correct?
Well, 760 Pandora is a modern building and it's on a separate roll number. That's their main facility that they're in. And Delta 9 is leased a certain amount of space in, again, a separate building on 770 Pandora, but it's much, much smaller than what we're indicating here, and that's only in the last number of years.
Would they have a higher, say, usage and utilities?
It's not
Compared to-
Delta 9 that we're referring to. This is
Yes,
storage
compared to
warehouse
other
tenancy.
tenants in the, sorry, compared to other tenants in the building, would they have a higher consumption of utilities?
Are you referring to Delta 9?
Yes, sorry, yeah.
Yes, so again, this isn't Delta 9. And Delta 9 isn't in this building.
But when you calculated the gross, you went to net from gross. I assume that when you calculated that, you took the whole building's utilities, is that correct?
Yes, equally, and I think this is important as you're focusing on this tenancy. Delta 9 was not leasing space in any portion of 770 Pandora in the 2015 year that we're referring to here.
I'll leave it at that. Is it safe to assume that the lease rates that you have chosen here have not been updated as of late by TGS?
Well, we obviously have access to the information that we have access to. I would agree that there has probably been some lift in rental rates in these over time. I don't question that. If we don't have that information, I can't present it obviously. So, but yes, certainly I would expect there's probably been some rise in rental rates for some of those over time. Yes.
And your shortfall amount, vacancy shortfall amount, you calculated that as stabilized over a period of years, is that correct?
Yes, I did two different stabilizations. So one for the 2023 year, one for 2021, and you can see the figures for each of those.
And you are aware that the city applies the same shortfall rate for all industrial properties in the city? Just fair and equitable.
I am aware of that. So the reason for the change, and I made this, I think, point up front, is that for a facility such as this, of this size, there are going to be increased costs. And that's why the city's shortfall rate isn't appropriate for this particular property. I don't typically change that, as the city's projection is generally reasonable, but you don't adjust that particular rate depending on the size of the facility. So equally, when we believe the rental rate is not fair for the property, we have to make adjustments to the model projections of the valuation structure where required, and that's why we've done it in this instance.
Okay, I think those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Desmohammed. Ms. Knight, have you any questions? Oh, sorry, you're muted.
Sorry. Page 18, which I think we just figured out why there was no age and wall height in there.
For 1821, well,
Yeah.
I wasn't able to get that information in time for publication of this report. I wasn't avoiding putting it in, I just didn't have that at the time.
Okay.
It's an older building.
Yeah. That's really my only question.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, questions?
I have no questions. They were asked and answered. Thanks.
And I don't have any questions at this time. So what we'll do now is, if everyone is in agreement, is we'll take a 5-minute or so recess. And Mrs. Harland, if you can, after you take us offline, forward to us the applicant and the assessor rebuttal evidence, please. we can have a quick look at, or we can have a look at it, and then Mr. Smith will invite you to present your rebuttal evidence, and then Mr. Dus Mohammed, you may present your rebuttal evidence. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I need to print the assessor's rebuttal evidence for the applicant.
Okay, how long do you think that will take?
I'll need a couple of minutes, so if it's okay, I'll take us offline.
Okay,
Then I'll go and I'll print it and I'll come back and we can go from there. Is that okay?
sure, that's fine. I'll say 10 minutes for now for all the YouTube watchers, and we'll see how close we get to it.
All right.
We're all here. I'll call this meeting back to order, please. Mr. Smith, we have received your rebuttal evidence, and it's, I'm just looking here to make sure we've got it all. It is 6 pages consisting of photographs. Is that the rebuttal evidence to which you will be referring?
That's correct.
Thank you. Then please present your rebuttal evidence.
Okay, thank you. This will be fast. Really, what I'm trying to illustrate here is just the comparability of the rental comps that the city has included in comparison to the subject property. So that's really all that's being pointed out. Again, looking at page 3 of the city's brief, the first property is owner occupied Woodland Supply. 1750 Inkster is your second one, owned by Artis REIT. And you can see the nature of the property, full renovation, new loading court, new offices, a lot of investment in the property right on Inkster. Second property, 200 Big Ann. While it may be built in 2005, this is a very high standard, modern flex warehouse in the city. They do have a significant tenant there of 136,000 square feet. But you can see what they're renting. That's within the formal St. Boniface Industrial Park development as well. Number 1000 King Edward is the next one. Former Safeway warehouse. This has been converted for multi-tenant use, investment into the building with regard again to the loading and loading court, as well as demising, etc. You can see that property. 1345 Redwood, built in 1990. This isn't the greatest picture of it, as it shows predominantly the office building, but it does give you an indication of the level of improvement. This was, I believe, General Motors. Originally, it has had a couple of tenancies since that time, but it was built to a very high standard. Certainly, what we would see as being superior to the subject, as are these other ones. And then finally, 1370 Sony Place. If you, pardon me, if you turn west onto McGillivray from Pembina Highway and head towards Waverley. This is located about halfway between Waverley and Pembina Highway on the south side. It's a premier storage warehouse in the city. It has large scale, good quality tenants, brewers distributing being one of them, other large national good covenant tenancies. So really what I'm trying to illustrate here, oh, and again, 34-foot wall height. So while it's built in 88, it's one of the better warehouses in the city. The point of showing the photos again is just with regard to the comparability of the city's comps to the subject. And obviously it's a challenge to find large leases like that. So I recognize the difficulty, but I just wanted the panel to be have that additional info when looking at that detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dustmohammed, have you any questions with respect to the rebuttal evidence?
Just no questions, just the statement on this 1345 Redwood. It was a Boeing manufacturing plant. And then
Mr. Dustmohammed, if you have a question, great, and there will be time for summary as well, and in addition for you to give yours, but statements or commentary at this point is not part of this.
No, okay, I'm good then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Knight, any questions?
No, sir.
Ms. Anderson?
I have no questions. Thank you.
And I have no questions. So, Mr. Dustmohammed, if we can have your rebuttal evidence, please. And just to be clear, I guess I've got, just looking at the number of pages here, you have some rent rolls, some tax verification forms, and then you've got some vacancy vacancy tables. Is that from the Johnson report? Is that
yes, I'm just gonna go through the lease comparables there.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we were all in possession of your rebuttal. So please, please proceed.
Okay, great, thank you. So just rebuttal to the applicant's lease comparables on page 18 of the applicant's brief.
Yes.
Okay. So as stated, the first property there, it's listed as 1821 Wellington. Actually, the address is 820 Berry Street, and it is the Park and Fly. It's 148,000, about 149,000 square feet. And we are in the, as mentioned before, there's no heat, and it's basically a garage. And we're on the 6th year of the lease, and the current lease rate on it is $2.75. If you turn the page, there is a picture of it. And then number 2, index number 2, 1093 Sherwin. Here is the current, well, at the reference date, the tenant roll. You'll note they have 175 total leasable area, and they're leasing at $3.65. And then we have the property on Inkster. So the applicant has 1750 Inkster listed, but 1750 only has a leasable area of 47,473. Maybe that was referred to as 1740 Inkster. You'll note that the leasable area there is 134,000 square feet, and it's rented between $5.50 and $5.75. Yes. On the following page is the income and expense mailer that was submitted for 1725 Sargent Avenue. And you'll note that property is fully owner occupied, so there are no leases in place for that one. And, I think there's some confusion on my part, maybe with Pandora, so I didn't put anything in for that one. But for Kernahan, 630 Kernahan, you'll note that there are no leases in the sizes that, or the areas that the applicant has provided. I think the biggest one on here is 108,842 square foot, and it is a gross lease. But again, we don't know how the calculation was done to bring that into a net lease. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that, and I'll let you pursue that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dustmohammed. Mr. Smith, have you any questions with respect to the rebuttal evidence?
Just a couple. So, Arif, so looking at what has been presented here, so as you'd mentioned, there's been some increase in the rental rates upon renewal of some of these tenancies, right? That's what you're indicating here essentially?
Yes, yes, and 630 Kernahan, I couldn't find the leases that you were or maybe that one at 108, but yeah, it is a gross lease, so I'll just leave it at that.
So the ones that I'm referring to in
Sorry,
particular,
Could you just give me 1 second, please? I have an
Yeah.
important call I need to take. It'll be 2 seconds.
yeah,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I take us offline or are you okay to wait?
Well, he said it wasn't going to be very long. If he's not back in another minute or two, we'll go offline and take another short recess.
Okay.
I was hoping it would be very short. Looks like it's going to be a little while. Why don't we take a short recess then, please, and go offline. We'll go back online when Mr. Das Mohammed returns. Thank you. We'll call the meeting back to order. And Mr. Smith, you were questioning Mr. Das Mohammed on his rebuttal evidence.
yes, thank you. So I'll just go through this quickly. So the first page there referring to my 1821 Wellington, 820 Barry, would you agree that the property kind of has 2 addresses, and for assessment purposes, it's, I believe, known as 1821 Wellington?
Yes.
Okay. And you had stated that it is, well, first of all, so it has increased in rental rate, I see, to 275 per square foot for the period of time that that we would be in. I certainly acknowledge that. Again, that's not necessarily information that we had up front. We didn't have it, otherwise I would have presented that. But you had stated that it is unheated, correct?
Yes, for BA, it is to my knowledge, it is not doesn't have the carrying charges that we charge for business assessment.
So, and I don't know how this will impact them, but I just confirmed with Park and Fly whether their facility was heated or not. I asked them if I was parking there, is your facility heated? And they confirmed that it is heated.
Okay.
That might
Maybe
be,
we have to update our records.
I wanna have a look at that particular one. So that's the first one. I acknowledge that the rental rate went up there, certainly. 1093 Sherwin, again, as you'd said, they've renewed since the renewal that I had, and they've increased to 365 per square foot from the 315 that they were at. I acknowledge that. That's
Although I'm not sure if you did mean 1740, I assume you meant 1740.
no, sorry, that was 1093 Sherwin that I was looking at there.
Oh,
the
sorry.
appliance products on your page, I guess it's your page 3.
Oh, yes, okay.
17, so let's move on to the one that you were just discussing there. So again, I've presented the main address of the building for assessment purposes. I didn't break it down by unit, so whether it's 17, 30, or 40, or 50. The building is what I'm referring to.
Fair enough. Yeah.
The the information that you've presented, I see, is as of year end 2022, right?
Yes, yes.
And you had stated that you saw no space that was the size that I had indicated. The period of time that the lease that I have included is from an earlier time period, correct?
Yes.
That could certainly be different.
I would, yeah, sure. Yeah.
And similarly for 1725 Sergeant, my time frame, the lease that is presented there is again from an earlier time frame, and your information is from 2022, so that could again certainly be different from that time frame.
Yeah, so when we pick comparables, we try and get as close to the reference date as possible. Yeah.
Certainly, and as do I, but when that information isn't widely available, you use what is, of course. 630 Kernahan, again, similarly, I think you were questioning the size of the units, and again, we're looking at different periods of time here, correct? So
Yes.
there would be a difference in what the tenancies were then versus currently.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, have you any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Ms. Knight, questions?
No, sir.
And I have no questions. Mr. Dustmohammed, have you any summary?
No, I'm good. Thank you very much.
Mr. Smith, any summary?
No, I think we're fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Then, having heard this matter, heard the evidence on this matter, we will conclude it, and you will be receiving our decision via registered mail shortly. I think we've heard all the items scheduled for hearing today, and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very
Very
much.
much for your time.
See you guys.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much. Have a
everyone.
good day.
Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, Mr. Chair, I'll go take us offline.
Thank you very much. Gail, Dan, do you need a minute before we start deliberating, or give some time for Trevor to pack up his things?
I'm done. Thank you. Oh, I really forgot my briefcase.
I'm good.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Mr. Chair, may we take a 5-minute break after I shut us down?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I may have to go get a cookie.
Okay.
Mm.